Section 8.3, the reactions of photosynthesis. This is the last section of the textbook, but it's pretty intense, so I asked you to read beforehand. Hopefully you read over Section 8.3. We'll do some practice in class, watch, and take notes on this lecture. So the reactions of photosynthesis, looking inside a chloroplast. In plants, photosynthesis takes place inside the chloroplast. The chloroplast is that organelle inside a plant leaf or inside a plant cell where photosynthesis occurs. And if we look at the structure of a chloroplast, the chloroplast contains thylakoids. And the thylakoids are sac-like photosynthetic membranes. Inside the thylakoid spaces is where the pigments would be stored, so plant pigments. A stack of thylakoids is called grana, or singular stack is granum. The proteins in the thylakoid membrane are going to organize chlorophyll and other pigments into clusters called photosystems. This is where light collecting units of the chloroplast. So in the photosystems, this is the light collecting units, and remember that light is needed for this part of photosynthesis. So this is where the light dependent reaction takes place. So what we have coming in, well, water and light energy are coming in to the plant and into the chloroplast. So this here is representing a chloroplast, and this structure here is a thylakoid. So it will be a stack of thylakoids known as grana. And we have the light-dependent reaction. We also have a molecule of NADP+, and ADP plus P is coming into the reaction. What happens? The light-dependent reaction takes place, and coming out, we get oxygen gas, we get ATP, and we have NADPH. NADPH is an electron carrier molecule. Now, in the other area of the chloroplast, it is called the stroma. And the stroma is where the Calvin cycle takes place. Going into the Calvin cycle makes the sugar. The Calvin cycle does not require light energy. Coming in, we have ATP, NADPH, and carbon dioxide gas. As the Calvin cycle occurs, all right, CO2 is coming in. That's where the carbon for the sugar molecule comes from, CO2. ATP is going to supply energy, and NADPH is going to supply the electrons to help convert CO2 into a sugar. So coming out, we get the sugar molecules. Electron carriers. When electrons in chlorophyll absorb sunlight, the electrons gain a great deal of energy. Cells use electron carriers to transport these high energy electrons from chlorophyll to other molecules. One of those carrier molecules is called NADP+. An electron carrier such as NADP+ transports electrons, more importantly, high energy electrons. So NADP+ accepts and holds two high energy electrons along with a hydrogen ion, and ultimately that converts NADP+ into a molecule called NADPH. So NADPH is the molecule that is high energy electron rich. In the light dependent reactions, light dependent, that means light is required. So light dependent reaction requires light energy. Key concept, the light dependent reactions produce oxygen gas, convert ADP and NADP+ into high energy carriers called ATP and NADPH. Here's how it's done. In the light dependent reaction, photosystems. photosynthesis begins when pigments in photosystem 2 absorb light, and that's going to increase their energy. So light energy comes into photosystem 2. These high energy electrons are passed along the thing called the electron transport chain, or ETC. So the high energy electron carriers move it along the electron transport chain. That membrane there is part of the thylakoid. It's the thylakoid membrane. The enzymes on the thylakoid membrane break water into hydrogen ions, oxygen atoms, energized electrons. So that's where the electrons for this reaction come from. It comes from the splitting of water. And we also get our byproduct there, known as oxygen gas. The energized electrons from water replace the high energy electrons that chlorophyll lost to the electron transport chain. As plants remove electrons from water, oxygen left behind is released into the air when the stomates are open. The hydrogen ions left behind when water is broken apart are released inside the thylakoid membrane. Now that's going to play an important role in just a second. Energy from the electrons is used to transport energy from the electrons is used to transport hydrogen ions from the stroma into the inner thylakoid space. You're going against the gradient. So from our transport unit, this would be active transport. Active transport is when molecules are going from an area of low concentration into an area of where they're already highly concentrated. So energy is required. That energy comes from the passing of these high energy electrons through the thylakoid membrane. There it is. High energy electrons move through the electron transport chain from photosystem 2 to photosystem 1. There's photosystem 1. Pigments in photosystem 1 use the energy from light to re-energize the electrons. NADP plus then picks up these high energy electrons along with hydrogen ions and becomes NADPH. There you have it. So now we have 2 of our 3 products of the light-dependent reaction so far. We have NADPH being formed. We have oxygen gas being formed as a product. The third product, if you remember, is ATP. Where does ATP come into play? Here it is. As the electrons are passed from chlorophyll to NADP+, more hydrogen ions are pumped across the thylakoid membrane. Soon, the inside of the membrane fills up with positively charged hydrogen ions, which makes the outside of the membrane negatively charged. The difference in charges across the membrane provides energy to make ATP. Ions can't cross the membrane directly, so they travel through a cell membrane protein called ATP synthase. ATP synthase is an enzyme. Look at the ASE ending to its name. That allows hydrogen ions to pass through the thylakoid membrane. As hydrogen ions pass through ATP synthase, the protein rotates. As it rotates, ATP synthase binds ADP and a phosphate group together to produce ATP. There's our third product of the light-dependent reaction. Because of this system, the light-dependent electrons, because of this system, the light-dependent electron transport produces not only high-energy electrons, but ATP as well. So that is the light-dependent reaction of photosynthesis. We are going to go over this in class. So you've read about it. Now you saw it in a lecture. We will talk about it in class. I will try and clarify any misconceptions you've had. We will also draw this reaction out to help you understand it a little bit better. So we're going to end here with section 8.3, and then we'll do a second lecture on the Calvin cycle. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice day.